As millennials and Gen Zs, we are obsessed with self-love.
I had very conflicting ideas of what love is. When I turned 21, I realized that I spent like a whole life trying to heal. I wasn't getting anywhere.
When did you kind of understand that your mom had passed away?
I was there. I knew the moment that it happened that she's not alive. Life will never be the same again.
In Indian culture, there is still a bit of a stigma and a shame if you are seen to move on too quickly after somebody passes away.
I will respect every ritual and every tradition as long as I'm not told that I need to grieve a certain way. My in-laws were like, you do what you want to do. But they couldn't understand the concept of you should not be going out for 40 days.
We've been told to ask, to speak up, to question things. Their generation, they were just told to do what they were meant to do. Hey everyone, and welcome back to a Millennial Mind podcast, a podcast where I sit down each week with guests that discuss all things from mindset, self-growth to entrepreneurship and extraordinary stories. This week, my guest is Dhal, best known for being a self-love guru. She's the author of the best-selling book, The Path to Self-Love, TEDx speaker, a poet, and has a huge audience on social media where she shares her advice and tips on how to love yourself more. My goal this year is to reach 150,000 subscribers on YouTube because this year YouTube has been such a priority for me and we have grown an incredible community which I am beyond excited about. I'm truly grateful for each and every one of you, and if you enjoy these episodes and want to see more from me on how you can continue to grow, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you never miss out on my new weekly episodes. Some of your favorite topics so far have been relationships, love, self-development, neuroscience, and therapy. So I promise to keep listening to your comments and your feedback and do what I can to bring you content that you love every single week. Thank you so much again. Let's get into this episode. Ruby, hi.
Hi.
Welcome to Millennial Mind.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I'm so excited to get into your story today.
I'm so happy to be here, honestly.
You are the queen of self-love.
I don't know. Am I the queen?
But you talk about self-love all of the time. And I think as millennials and Gen Zs, we are obsessed with self-love.
Yeah.
Why are we so obsessed with self-love?
I feel like after generations, like after decades and decades of self-love not being something that people talk about at all, right? Our parents' generation, the generation above them, people didn't really talk about self-love. It wasn't a priority. So the moment that it became, a topic of conversation, everybody hopped on the bandwagon. Everyone was like, yes, self-love is this thing that I need in my life. And that's why it's become so hot and trending. It's become a buzzword in modern day culture.
And what do you think defines self-love? Like, how would you define self-love?
I would define self-love as an intention to take care of yourself that isn't limited to just self-care practices. So I would say a lot of the time people see self-love as, let me take myself on a self-care day. Let me chant I love you to the mirror every day. Let me chant these positive affirmations to myself, or take care of my physical health, yoga, meditation. Let me do these things that make me feel good. Let me do these feel-good things so that I can improve my life. For me, self-love isn't just the feel-good things. It's actually the hard things. It's the tough things. It's the actions that may not necessarily make you feel good in the moment or soon after, but those are the things that are going to improve your life going forward. So for me, tough self-love is self-love.
Tough self-love is an interesting one. I feel like we've become a generation where we can make an excuse for everything and say it's self-love. Oh, I can't make it out tonight. Self-love evening. Oh, I'm just not going to do my work today because I deserve a bit of self-love. The deadline doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. Failing doesn't matter anymore. And I know that sounds harsh, but it seems like we can make an excuse about everything and just blame it on looking after ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, there's a fine line between self-love and selfishness. There's a fine line between wanting to take care of yourself and then wanting to just put yourself first at every single opportunity at the cost of other people's happiness, at the cost of other people's well-being. So there's a chapter in my book which is called Balancing Loving Yourself with Loving Others. So self-love isn't just self-centered. Like, self-love has to take other people in consideration. You have to care about your relationships because your relationships are integral to you living a healthy and happy life. So it's not about being like, oh, I need to take care of myself. I need to take this day off. I need to focus on my mental health and well-being. I need to constantly do things and show up for myself. It's about sometimes pushing through the difficult stuff, pushing through the challenges. Like this particular thing may be uncomfortable for me, but if I do it, I know that it's going to improve my life.
Yes.
So it's about actually putting yourself through uncomfortable situations sometimes that are going to help you going forward. So for instance, the idea of, oh, let me just, take this day off and not do anything. If you've got a therapy appointment later, like you have done that for yourself and you're telling yourself, I'm not going to go to therapy because that's not something that I want to do today. I don't feel good. That therapy session is going to improve your life. That's like sitting down with a therapist, talking about your past trauma, whatever it is that you're going through, is going to be difficult to do on a day when you're not feeling good, but it is going to make you feel better eventually. So distinguishing between putting yourself first when you just want to take it easy and putting yourself first when you want to do the hard things that will actually help you, it's so important.
I love that. And I think it's so nice to remember that we all can define what is important for us, but also we all know our own limits. Right? Like you just said, like, if you're going to be lazy, only you know if you're lazy.
Yeah.
If you're going to push something back because you can't be bothered, only you know that. And I think as a child, I used to always think that like your parents know everything, right?
Yeah.
But actually, I was the one that was disappointed in myself when I didn't put the effort in for my exams because I was the one that knew that I didn't try hard enough.
Yeah.
Right? Like your
Yes.
parents will always say to you, did you try hard enough? Like, why didn't you do this? And the reason why you feel bad is because you know that you didn't. And it's the same in your adult life, right?
Yeah.
Like you might be doing well. Like I often say this sometimes, like with my journey, is that sometimes I don't think I'm doing enough. And for other people, they think I am. But I'm like, but I know that I could be doing more.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that someone else's definition of what enough is never going to be the same as yours. And so I think that's always really important to remember. Why did you start writing about self-love in the first place? What was it that made you realize the power of self-love?
So for me, the biggest thing was that I went through quite like a difficult childhood growing up. I lost my mum when I was 4. I went through that, that immigrant child life along with grieving and going through that loss and trying to go through the various grief stages. And very early on, I turned to books as a form of escapism. So I used to read and find, these stories about kids who have a happy childhood, a happy family, and I just escape in them. And this went on for quite a long while. But when I turned a certain age, when I turned 21, I realized that I spent like a whole life trying to heal and trying to move forward from the biggest like traumatic experience of my life. And I wasn't getting anywhere. Like I wasn't making the progress that I wanted to make. I wasn't making the progress that I thought I should have made by now. And that's when I had a breakdown and I was like, okay, I need to do something for myself. So I started writing to kind of heal the parts of me that were hurting. And because I loved writing since I was little, I used to write stories and books. I was writing like my first ever novel when I was 18. I was doing that whole thing. So I started writing to heal myself. I started writing to move forward, like as a form of journaling. And somehow I started sharing those pieces online on Instagram. I created an Instagram page and I started sharing those pieces. Those pieces were made for me. They were written for me to move forward and heal. But somehow they found a place online on social media. And as I wrote, I started to heal, to feel better. And when I discovered that I needed to get to a point in my healing journey where I felt lighter, where I felt like I could manifest that happy, healthy life that I want, I discovered self-love. And self-love, my experience with self-love was very different to what I saw online on social media. And so when I discovered self-love in the way that I write about now, I knew that I needed to write about a book about it, and I needed to write pieces on my social media pages about it. So my journey of self-love has been very much like go on social media, go on, research what's going to help me feel better and heal, realize that doesn't work for me, and then discover self-love for myself and then write about that and how that could help people, basically.
I love that.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about grief.
Yeah.
Because it's a very uncomfortable topic. And I think people shy away from it. But the more we shy away from things, the less that we learn.
Yeah.
When did you kind of understand that your mom had passed away? Because you were only 4 years old.
Yeah. So for me, I the experience of her passing away, it happened like I was there. So basically I
remember.
saw her. Yeah. So I remember her passing away. So I knew the moment that it happened that she's not alive, basically. The actual feeling of grief, the stages of grief, they didn't come until much later, because in the beginning I was like, okay, so there was this person in my life who was very significant and now that person doesn't exist.
Right.
So that was one thing that I went through. The second was, as a 4-year-old, just witnessing around me, like seeing what was going on. My environment changed, my home changed, the situation of my dad changed. He was grieving, he was going through the various stages. So being able to see all of that kind of already brought about that acknowledgement that this person is no longer in my life. But my personal experience of grieving and me understanding that there is a loss that I need to heal from, it happened as I was growing up. So it's just various points. It's various points, like as a child, going to a party, all the kids have their mum, my mum's not there. It occurs to me, oh, I don't have a mum. Like just different experiences dotted throughout my childhood where I realized that I don't have this significant figure in my life. I didn't know I was going through the various stages of grief. So there's different stages. There's rejection, there's acceptance, there's bargaining, where you make bargains like with God. You're like, oh, please bring this person back into my life. There's like so many things that you do when you go through grief. And I didn't know that I was doing them until I was much older. And then I realized that, oh, at this point in my life, when I used to, sleep and I cry to myself, I was going through that phase of acceptance that, oh, this person is no longer in my life. At this point in my life where I was making bargains with God that, oh, please, then I realized that, oh, I went through these various stages of grief. I'm obviously much older now, so I have processed that grief. I have moved forward with it, but it took a really, really long time, because as a child, not only are you going through the various stages of childhood and, adolescence, but then you're moving forward and you're like, oh, I went through these different experiences and I actually came through from it. And it hits you when you grow older.
How did you cope on a bad day when you're struggling with grief? Because I know grief, like you said, has all these different stages and you're kind of in a roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
Some days are okay, some days are not. And I think a lot of people who are trying to support somebody who's perhaps lost a parent, or somebody at home who's listening right now who's perhaps lost a parent, I think there's a narrative sometimes that, like, I'm never going to feel the same again.
Yeah.
Like, nothing will be the same. Everything's changed now.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that?
It's really hard. I think in the beginning, anyone who has experienced grief, who has lost someone that's significant to them, that feeling of that person's never going to be in my life again is heavy. So I lost my mom when I was 4, but I recently lost my stepmom. So my dad got remarried and she passed away 2 months ago. And I think, again, I'm going through the stages of grief with a different human being in my life, someone who I'd spent like the last 14 years of my life with. And so I think the expectation that life will be the same again should just go out the window. Life will never be the same again. This person has gone. That's a reality. That's something that you over time will accept, that they are no longer in your life. Now, when someone passes away, what we do is we hold not only the sadness that this person has passed away, but also we feel sad for ourselves, because when we love people, when we spend time with them, when we include them in our life, we give them parts of ourselves. We give away parts of our heart, essentially. And when those people are gone, when those people pass away, we lose those parts of ourselves. So when someone passes away, when we lose a very significant person, we feel empty. We feel like that significant part of my heart is missing. It's gone. So what you're grieving is not just them. You're grieving that life you shared with them, and you're grieving the part of you that went with them. Then it comes the whole, regret, the guilt, the shame. Oh, I wish I spent more time with them. I wish I told them that I loved them. I wish I did this. I wish I did that. And that regret is going to also, go into your grief journey. And it's going to, when you're initially grieving, all of that's going to come out. Okay. The way that I dealt with it, and the way that I continue to deal with it, is acknowledging that this person was a huge part of your life, seeing their loss not as a failure on your part, but as a success that you've got so long to spend with them. You got all these years, all these months to spend with that person.
Yeah.
When you grieve them, don't grieve the fact that they're gone. Grieve the fact that, a part of you got to spend that time with them and you got a beautiful experience with them, remember them in the good times. Remember, all the good moments that you had with them. Look back at the photos with a smile on your face. They may no longer be with you, in person, but they're always going to stay with you. But because just like the part of yours that went with them, they left a part of themselves with you. And that part will always go forward with you no matter what happens. And so it's completely normal to feel, regret, guilt, sadness, emptiness. Knowing that life is never going to be the same again is a reality,
right.
But that doesn't mean that life isn't worth living. It doesn't mean that life isn't worth going forward with them in your heart still. And I think that's something we should always just accept and know that, life will never be the same again. It never is, because loss is a part of life. It's something that everybody goes through, but life never has to be the same again. Change is a part of life. Losing people, gaining people, it's all a part of life. And so we just have to learn to grow with the pain and go forward with it.
I love that. And I think that, we all know that when we come into this world, we have to go.
Yeah.
And yet when we lose someone, we think it's so unjust and so unfair. Yeah. And I always say to people, instead of saying, why me? Because who deserves it?
Nobody.
People say like, I don't deserve this. And I often say like, I never have said this to someone. It's so insensitive. Imagine when someone's like, why me? You're never going to say like, well, then who?
Well, then who, yeah.
Right? But seriously, then who? Who deserves it? No one. And I think that when you're in that position, it can be so hard to see that kind of bigger picture. I'm not sure about you, but in Indian culture, there is still a bit of a stigma and a shame if you are seen to move on too quickly after somebody passes away.
Yeah.
So how you mentioned that there's shame and guilt within oneself around grief, I guess there's also shame and guilt from other people judging you, depending on how you grieve.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how people manage that? Because some people can manage grief a little better than others. If you speak to someone who's a monk or you speak to someone who's very spiritual, they see the body as just a vessel.
Yeah.
Like how you change your clothes. That's how we read it as well in the Gita. So if you see your body as just something like you change your clothes and you move on and your spirit lives on and that person's always with you, then perhaps you're able to deal with grief a lot better than someone who doesn't perhaps believe that or doesn't perhaps accept that.
Yeah.
So how do they cope with accepting their grief without also taking on everyone else's judgments?
I think if you are, like, for instance, if it's someone who's a monk,
right,
they probably don't care what people think. Like,
Yeah,
they
they probably
are
don't.
so detached from
Yeah.
the world that it doesn't matter to them what people think. For people like you and I, who live in a South
not a
Asian
monk.
community, who are not a monk, who come from a community and a background where there is stigma, there is this judgment of, someone in her family has just passed away and look, she's out already.
Right.
She's gone out already.
Yes.
She's already wearing makeup. She's already wearing clothes.
Yes.
She's already going to parties or whatever. That stigma, unfortunately, for people who are from the older generation, that's going to stay because you can't change decades of a way of thinking. So you can't change. The one thing that I have always accepted about our community is that the people above me, I can never change
Right.
their thoughts. I can't change their thinking patterns. I can't change their moral views. I can't change their values because if I can't change myself and I'm 30 now, why would I be expected? Like, how can I expect 60-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 40-year-olds to change, right?
That's true.
Can't do that. So the way that I deal with it is I focus on myself. I focus on my own grieving journey. And I think to myself that they are going to think and they're going to say whatever they want about me. I can't change them, but I'm not going to change myself. If I feel okay enough to go out, if I need to take a walk for my mental health, I'm going to take a walk for my mental health. If I want to meet up with my friends for dinner, because that's going to make me feel better about, that's going to clear my mind a bit.
Right.
I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go step out. I'm going to go see my friends. I'm going to put on makeup. I'm going to do all of that. A little story, actually. My stepmom passed away 2 months ago. And I come from this community, right? This community of judgment, this community of how can you step out so quickly? So my dad's side, so like my family are very different to my in-laws. My in-laws are very liberal, very open-minded.
Right.
So when my stepmom passed away, they were there, they took care of me. But they couldn't understand the concept of my family telling me that you should not be going out for 40 days or you should not be stepping in, putting makeup on, doing this and doing that. And my in-laws were like, do what you want to do, what is good for you, what you feel happy with. You know, this is not a space where we expect you to act a certain way because someone has passed away.
But hold on, let's give their side.
Yeah.
Why do they tell you to stay at home for 40 days?
So it's this idea of like, this is what doesn't make sense to me. You shouldn't go out for 40 days because what are people going to think? Someone has just passed away and this is just what we do. Like this is a ritual that we do for 40 days. We don't go out. And then after 40 days, we do a prayer and then you can step out. And this is just something we've done for generations. It's just something that's in our culture that you have to do, right?
Right.
And I respected their view, but did I do what I needed to? Absolutely.
This is where I think there's a disconnect though, between our generation and the generation above, and it's nobody's fault.
Yeah.
So my dad is quite, he asks a lot of questions. That's probably where I get it from.
Yeah.
He's always asked a lot of questions. So I remember when I would ask him things, he would generally kind of have the answer.
For it.
So what I'm hearing from you, this is an assumption, I don't know this 100%, is you're probably not allowed to step outside for 40 days because it allows you to grieve. It allows you to spend time with the family. A lot of people do prayers. So in our culture, we do prayers for a certain number of days because then we believe that the soul is still there and then we release it.
Yeah.
So I do think that there are so many beautiful traditions and cultures, but nobody knows the meaning of them. And therefore, we can't understand them. And as our generation, we're trying to place meaning on everything and trying to really understand and learn, we don't follow them because we don't understand them. I want to tell you a little story about my grandma.
Yeah.
Which maybe will make light of the situation. So my grandma was like 85. And growing up, I would constantly ask her questions. You know, why do we do things in this way? Why can't I do this on a Tuesday? Why can't I do this here? And she would get really annoyed with me and just say, you know, we weren't allowed to ask these questions. Just like, I don't know the answer. What do you want me to say?
Yeah.
And now when I ask her, she says to me very softly, you know, it's not that I don't want to tell you. It's that I was never allowed to ask the same questions you're asking me. Yeah. And it sometimes makes me think like what a privilege I have to be able to ask her why.
Yeah.
She wasn't even allowed to ask, you know, how.
Yeah.
She just had to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference in our generations. It's like we've been told to ask, to speak up, to question things.
Yeah.
And in their generation, they were just told to do what they were meant to do.
Yeah. I think for me, it's not about even being able to ask. I think it's about placing a restriction on what you can and can't do. So why 40 days?
Right.
Why not 2 months? Why not 3 months? Why not 6 months? And why does it have to be that you need to grieve a certain way?
Right. Like one size fits all.
One size fits all. As we spoke about grief in general, grieving works differently for everyone. Okay. So if someone has, how you grieve is very different to how I grieve. And our grieving of the same person is also very, very different. Perhaps you had a different relationship with that person. Perhaps you were closer. Perhaps you were less close. Perhaps you were on good terms. Perhaps you were on bad terms.
So
perhaps it was complicated. Whatever it is, putting everybody in a one-size-fits-all approach, regardless of what culture community you come from, that's just wrong. So if it's a case of we have, you know, when you're grieving, every culture grieves differently. So for instance, in our culture, it's very community oriented. So it's when someone passes away, the family gets together, there's prayers, there's gatherings. We have that too. Prayers, gatherings. You do langar in the Gurdwara, which is the, you know, the free food for all. You do these prayers, you do everything, right? And I totally respect that. I'm like, yes, absolutely. You know, it's for the soul, it's for the peace of the soul, for, you know, wherever the soul goes, for it to be either, because we believe in reincarnation, so the next life for it to be a peaceful, happy one. Regardless, the restriction of you cannot do this until this, you cannot do that until that, that is what I think our generation in general has a problem with.
Correct.
I will respect every ritual and every tradition as long as I'm not told that I need to grieve a certain way or I need to do something in a certain way. So if I know that for instance, someone has passed away and for 40 days we do these prayers, absolutely. But if I'm told that you cannot take out an hour for your mental health to go see someone when I know that that's going to help me in my grief, that is, I think that's the problem. So it's not about like, because even the adults in my family, there are certain explanations for everything, right?
Right, yeah.
There's certain explanations for everything when you dig deep enough and when you ask the questions. However, the imposing of those restrictions, the imposing of those rituals, I think that's where it's difficult. everyone grieves differently, and they should be allowed to grieve differently and without judgment. And I think that's the thing. You know, if you want to process, if you want to follow the process of the 40-day period, the 3-month period, the 6-month period, great. If you want to respect that process but also grieve in the way that you need to grieve, there's no problem there.
And I think like asking the question of like, you know, why is it that we have that as well can help you to really understand, like, does this align with me?
Yeah.
You know, because if it's just like, well, 40 days we tested and we thought that back in the day it was a good time.
Yeah.
It's like, well, maybe that doesn't align at the moment right now.
Yeah.
Also, like, I think people miss some parts, which is not everyone has a good relationship with their loved ones.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people whose parents have passed away and they didn't have a good relationship with them. And they didn't feel like they wanted to grieve a lot because they'd already grieved while they were alive, which is really difficult for someone from the outside to kind of understand. Yeah. You went through a really difficult breakup in your 20s.
I mean, it wasn't a relationship breakup.
Right.
It wasn't a relationship breakup.
What breakup was it?
It was, okay, so I grew up in a very, very strict family. Okay, so I'm a South Asian girl. I was brought up in a very, very strict family. I was brought up with my dad, my brother, my 2 uncles. So I had all these like adult men controlling me. So I was never allowed to date. Okay, I was never allowed to date in my teens. I was never allowed to date in my late teens either. So the way that I'm a Gen Z? No, I'm not Gen Z. I'm a millennial.
It's a millennial
I'm a millennial. Sorry, I'm a millennial. And in my time, the only way that we could really form relationships or friendships was through social media, right? So all my friends were on MSN, on Facebook, Bebo, BBM.
Sweet Bobby's coming your way now.
That's it. Those were my friends. Those were all my relationships and friends. And so I built these really strong friendships and connections with people through social media. Right. You know what? I resonate now, Shivani, with Sweet Bobby because
I told you. I feel so sorry for her.
Yeah. So I had best friends from my community. I went to a girls' school. So I had best friends, guys, girls from my community who I spoke to on text and Facebook and MSN, but I never actually met them. And I had a best friend of 7 years and he was my best friend since I was 14.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you still never met him?
No, he was from my community, so I would see him at events. It's not like he didn't exist.
Okay.
So I would see him at events and stuff, as in not personally, but like Gurdwara, Diwali, he's there, like that.
That
kind
sounds
of thing.
really similar to Sweet Bobby. I'm telling you.
So we were friends for 7 years,
right?
And he was the only kind of boy friendship I had. So he was the only knowledge I had of what it's like to talk to a boy, basically. I had other guy mates as well, all social media, texting, whatever. Anyway, so because of I had very conflicting ideas of what love is, okay? So this goes all to my childhood trauma. So when my mum passed away, my dad grieved a lot for her. And I had never seen a healthy relationship, a healthy romantic relationship in my life. So all the adult relationships, marriages, everything that I had seen, I just didn't see something that I was like, yeah, these people are truly in a healthy relationship. They care about each other. It's healthy and good. I didn't know what that was. Okay?
Can I ask why?
Because my dad lost, like my mum passed away. So my dad spent all of his life grieving for her.
Right.
So he was always in pain for her.
Got it.
And I had uncles and aunties and the generation above me, like these are like 50, 60-year-olds. I didn't really see expressions of love in their relationships, right? The way that they express love in our community as 50, 60-year-olds, back then they were like in their 30s, 40s, but they never, like, I never saw them, you know, do sweet gestures. I never saw a healthy relationship because their equation was very different. It was very focused on family, focused on kids, so I didn't know what a relationship that is healthy in millennials looks like. So I equated love with struggle. I equated love with unhappiness. I equated love with, if I have to fight to be loved, then this is love. Okay? With rejection, with all of that. So here I am. I'm now 21. I've known this guy for 7 years. I've met him probably twice in those 7 years, okay? That too in group settings. So I've never actually, like we've spoken on the phone, but I've never actually, we've never dated. We've never gone on a single date. None of that
But you met him in a group setting and he's acknowledged you. Sorry, I've just watched Sweet Bobby. You haven't watched it yet, so.
No. So we are best friends, but we're social media friends.
Right.
So the first time that I experienced love was when I expressed that, oh, I really, really, like, I have feelings for you.
Right.
And he expressed his feelings for me, but it didn't work out. So because it didn't work out, And we have never dated. So I was heartbroken. And I was truly heartbroken because I was like, I am so in love. But now, as a 30-year-old, looking back on that 10 years ago, that wasn't love. That was my idea of what love was, because I was rejected, right? I was struggling. I was like, I have expressed that I really, really want to be with this person. It's not worked out. It didn't work out for my dad either. And he really loved my mum. So this is what love is. Love is struggle.
So
love
now
is
I
pain.
love him so much.
I love him so much. I love him so much because I'm hurting. I love him so much because I'm in pain. I love him so much because, like that was my idea of love.
So interesting.
So it was a friendship breakup. We were friends, social media friends for 7 years. And then when it fell apart, I was like, oh my God, I'm so heartbroken. And then obviously I went through that whole grief process of trying to heal from my childhood trauma, trying to heal from that heartbreak, trying to heal from it all. And then when I met my husband, which is the first guy I ever dated, which is so embarrassing for me, but he's the first one.
Embarrassing?
Because, okay, so I don't know if you've had this line, but like people girls specifically who come from these very strict South Asian backgrounds, when we turn 21, like when we've graduated, after years of being like restricted and like put on these house locks of not dating and seeing, then when I turned 21 and graduated, my dad was like, oh, so do you have anyone in mind that you'd like to get engaged to? And I just looked at him like, are you kidding me? Like, I have not been able to date a single guy, and now at 21 you're asking me if I have someone in mind. Like, what do you mean? If I have now I need to start actually going out there and like talk to people. So yeah, like after 21 I healed, I spoke to people, I did the whole social media situationship, talking, whatever, and then I went on my first ever romantic date with my now husband. And it was through healing and grieving and kind of relearning what love was that when I met my husband, and he was my first relationship, and I made so many mistakes and I did so many things where, like, because I was so obsessed with the idea of struggle in love and struggle with relationships, when we first started dating, I used to look for problems. I used to look for ways to argue, reasons to argue.
Self-sabotage.
And when things were good, I was like, I'm bored. Like, I'm bored. Why is, like, what's going on? Like, it was like that because I was so used to struggle in my life. I spent like all of my childhood, adolescence and early 20s struggling, like at home, really struggling. There were fights, there was arguments, there was just so much baggage in my life that when I met this one guy who came baggage free, he had his problems as well, but he came from like a fairly normal, he was not as messed up as I was. He was not as filled with baggage. He was not as broken as I was. And so I used to look for ways to sabotage that relationship all the time. And then it was through getting into that relationship and through learning who I was and what love was in that relationship that I was able to completely strip away all those toxic ideas of love and actually accept a healthy relationship for once in my life. And when I accepted that healthy relationship, everything started falling into place. Everything, Shivani. Like, when I say my career, my finances, everything just happened for me. The moment that there was like a healthy balance in my life. It's just so weird because I talk about it in my book as well, where self-love is so integral, but the right romantic relationship can truly 100% take you to new levels. Because
I agree.
Like, I have evolved and everything has just become so much better for me through being in that healthy, good relationship, to being stable.
Yes.
And
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, so that's my journey of like social media. Like, I feel the sweet Bobby vibes, and now I understand what it means to be so
Before
attached.
this, you were like, no. And I was like, no, you are. And I was in a relationship with someone for 7 years and I met him twice. I'm like... And I never saw him. I'm like, hello. So now you get it. And the thing is, I don't think it was that abnormal. That's what I'm trying to say. So like, abnormal. When people are looking at Sweet Bobby, now this is a Sweet Bobby dilemma, but when people are looking at that, they're thinking, oh, in this day and age, it's crazy. No, in that day and age, it wasn't. It was very normal.
It was very normal.
And like you said, there's a massive pressure on Indian women and generally South Asian women to get married at 21. There's and even if there's not pressure to get married immediately, there's a pressure in terms of talking about it, in terms of an expectation, and also in terms of the fact that you're kind of a failure if you don't. I want to talk about your first point there.
Yeah.
When you were saying that you healed.
Yeah.
How did you heal?
Okay, so I can't say I healed in the sense of I am a healed person, okay? I healed from that particular healing journey. So that particular, I am heartbroken and I need to move forward from this particular experience in my life. I have healed from that. However, healing journeys, they're not linear. So it's not a case of like there's a start point and an end point and you reach the end point and you're a brand new healed person. You have moved on completely and that's it. Healing journeys are cyclical and they are up and down. So there's certain things that you can heal, not even heal. There's certain things that you can reach a softer place in your healing journey from.
Right.
And there's certain experiences that you don't. So say that you are healing from a heartbreak and you are healing from the loss of a parent. From that heartbreak, potentially, if it was like a 2-3 month, 6 month thing, you may reach a softer, gentler place soon. You may, move forward from that particular person. Healing from the loss of a parent is a lot harder. So you can go through these healing journeys at the same time, where you're healing from that and you're healing from this. You may have reached an easier point in that healing journey, but you're still continuing to heal from this. Now, while you're healing from the loss of a parent, say you lose a job. Now you're healing from that failed opportunity. Then you go on another healing journey. Yeah. So we go on various healing journeys in our life, okay? And we reach softer places in certain healing journeys and not softer places in others. So when I talk about that particular healing journey that I went on at 21, yeah, absolutely. I feel sorry for that person and I am grateful for that experience because had I not gone through that experience, I probably would have never created the Instagram page, never shared the pieces, never. So I always say I'm so thankful for that 7 years social media.
For what they did for you.
For what they did for me, honestly. Like, I am so grateful for that.
What's your favourite poem that you've written on heartbreak?
Oh, there's so many. The thing is, my poems are all like, they're pieces of prose. So they're these big chunks of quotes. But there's this one that is very popular, that goes viral every time I share it. And it's not about that particular person, it's someone else. But hey, if you ever talk to a writer, I'm sorry, but we're going to write about you.
Love it.
It's this one where I'll send it to you, but it's what do you do when someone isn't ready to be with you? And it's about a particular situationship. So we often find, like many of us in our dating lives have found ourselves in these situationships where you're talking to someone and they imply that they like you, but then they act in a way that goes against that. So they string you along. So they talk to you every day. They message you throughout the day. There's a stronger thing of like, why is this person always talking to me if they don't want to date me?
Right.
And women have often, like I've spoken to so many girls who have found themselves in these situationships where they're so attached to this one person who's stringing them along and keeping his options open, essentially. So what he's doing is he's talking to you, but he's talking to probably other girls as well, if he's one of those, And so I wrote a piece about how you really need to accept your self-worth and move on. If someone is acting like they do not want you in their life and they're stringing you along, it's time for you to accept that this is not going to happen. Because if they were so right for you, then you wouldn't be losing sleep over why you're not together. If that person was right for you, you wouldn't be sitting here wondering, why is he not making a move? Or why is he not returning my advances? Or why is he, like you've made the effort and he's not making an effort, but he's still keeping you in his life. There's something wrong there. There is something wrong there. So I wrote a piece about like a situationship of being attached to someone who's emotionally unavailable.
Ooh.
And I really like that piece. Like it goes viral every time. So even after like 8 years of me sharing it, I'm like, oh my God, people are still...
Because I think so many people do fall in love with the idea of someone rather than who they really are.
Absolutely.
And when we think about our past and our exes, we always think about all the best parts and always forget the worst.
Absolutely.
But there's a reason why you're not with that person anymore.
There's a reason.
And you have to remember it, even if that means making a list. Absolutely. Sometimes I did that. I used to make a list because I would forget.
Yeah.
I would genuinely forget all the bad things about them. Yeah. And so I made a list of all the bad things about them. So then if I ever, this was when I was much younger and obviously less mature.
Oh, no. I mean, I did it when I was 24 and I was dating my current husband.
Really?
I would make a list about him. Yeah. Absolutely.
Watch out.
Yeah. Don't anymore, but...
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to open your phone.
When we first started dating, I made a list, the good parts and the bad parts.
Do you recommend people do that?
Absolutely, because I feel like if you're dating with the intention to be with someone in the long run, don't just, look at them through a rose-tinted glass. But don't put on those glasses and be like, yeah, this person is just perfect. If you can accept their imperfections as well as their perfection, well, not perfections, but if you can accept their bad parts as well as their good parts, great. But you need to know what those bad parts are.
So true.
You need to know, because no one is perfect. Even your life partner is not perfect.
We're not perfect.
We're not perfect,
Yeah. Do you believe in right person, wrong time?
Yes, I do.
It's a hard question, actually.
Oh, do I believe in right person, wrong time?
I used to think yes.
Yeah, you tell me your perspective, because in the beginning I'm like yes, but
Yeah,
then
that's
I'm
my
like,
initial
wait,
response.
Yeah, wait, okay.
I think
Yeah.
it's so difficult, because if they were right for you,
Yeah.
then wouldn't you find a way to be together? But
Yeah.
then I also think some people come into your life at a later stage, or too early of a stage, or you're different ages, and societal pressure has got too much to you, or distance is too much if you live in a different country. I don't know.
Okay, so as someone who is happily married, I can say that in life you will meet people who are different kinds of right for you.
For sure.
Okay? So there's percentages of how compatible you are. I feel like if someone is right for you to a great extent and there's a higher potential, it will work out. And if they're not as right for you, like, I believe a lot in destiny, if I'm quite honest with you. I feel like people are meant for each other.
Yeah.
So there are people who you are meant to find in your life. There have been occasions where you will meet two people at the same time and it works out with one and it doesn't work out with the other, and they're both different kinds of right for you. Why did it work out with one and it didn't work out with the other? So my husband now, when I was speaking to him and he slid into my DMs through Instagram, of course, he was great, he was wonderful, but he was a little bit of a, like, this is a typical romance, like, rom-com scene, I'm telling you, where the girl meets the bad boy and she's like, oh, I can change him. Right. He wasn't a bad boy, but he was emotionally unavailable when we met. So he reached out to me, he slid into my DMs, he spoke to me, but then he realized, oh my God, like, if I date her, like, this is it, you know, because we were both 24 at the time. So he was like he got a bit scared, because he was like, I've only just started my career, I've just started working and so on. So I set my boundaries straight. I was like, look, if I date you, it has to, it doesn't have to go to marriage, but you have to date me with the intention to see where it goes.
Yes, we're not going to
play around. Yeah, I'm not playing around with you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to play around. So that was the conversation that we had. At the same time that I was speaking to him, I had a meet cute in a coffee shop. Okay, and that is the biggest meet cute for a writer, because I dream of meeting people in coffee shops. Okay. And met this wonderful, absolutely amazing person. Was so like, his mindset, we clicked straight away. He was also from my community, my husband's also from my community. Everything was like aligned. Okay, and I'm speaking to my husband at this time, bump into this guy, have the most like engaging conversation with this wonderful guy. He follows me on Instagram. I tell my husband who I'm dating, oh, I met this guy, and my husband's just so chill. Yeah, like, talk to him. I don't really care. Like, I know that you're gonna be with me, so you can talk to him if you want. Like, he was that cocky. Like, he was the cocky shit. Because we weren't together at the time. Right. So he was talking to me, and he was like, if you want to talk to this guy, if you want to talk to this guy, you can talk to this guy, but I know that at the end you're going to pick me. So he was that cocky. Anyway, he's not like that anymore. He loves me. He worships the floor I walk on.
I love it. Yeah.
He did a 360, I'm telling you. He went from being emotionally unavailable to literally like, every day, I love you, baby, I love you.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so bump into this guy, talk to him, and he keeps messaging me, and he's like, oh, we should meet up. Like, we should definitely go for dinner at some point. But then he disappears, and I'm like, okay, that's great. At the same time, I'm talking to my husband, and then I start dating my husband, and then I fall for him, right? Then I'm like head over heels in love with him. Then this guy who I had a meet cute with, who was honestly, Shivani, if it wasn't for my husband, if it hadn't worked out with my husband, I probably would have, like, it would have worked out with him. Anyway, he disappears, comes back after 6 months, when now I'm head over heels in love with my husband. And he's like, oh, we never did go on that date, like that dinner. Sorry, he didn't even say date, that dinner. Like, we should definitely meet up or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, like, that's great. And then my husband's like, you should tell him that you're in a relationship. And I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, I tried to like slide it in that, oh, sorry, I was just speaking to my boyfriend, like, just to make it clear that I am in a relationship now. And the guy's like, that's such bad timing. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, when I bumped into you in that cafe 6 months ago, I felt so refreshed meeting someone so like-minded, and I was like, I didn't know that, like I had never met someone like you essentially, but I was going through a bad breakup at the time, and I hadn't broken up yet, and I was going through that experience. And he goes, now I'm single, and I'm like, I would love to date you, but you're in a relationship. And I was like, wow, like I'm so sorry, we can be friends if you want to. And he was like, I don't want to be your friend. Like I can't be your friend, basically. So for me, when I say that there is a right and a wrong time for people, but there's also destiny and what's meant to be. I was meant to be with my husband, because now when I think about it, if it had worked out with this guy, great. Would I have had the life that I have now? Like, because with my husband, my life has been like, when I think about how amazingly my life has changed and how much I have grown and how good this person has been for me, I can't imagine being with anyone else. I can't imagine being with that particular person, because I don't know how my life would have turned out.
Right.
I don't know how I would have grown, but how good my husband has been for me, and how healthy my life became because of him, and how happy I am. I'm like, this was meant to be for me.
Yes.
Maybe that guy was a percentage of right. Maybe that guy was a percentage of right.
Right.
But this guy was all the percentage of right for me, and he was meant for me.
That's so sweet.
And I think that's the important thing about how you can meet people who have the potential to be a good partner or a good level of right for you. But there's only one person that's like the level of right.
Okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Do you believe that there's only one person in the whole world for you?
I believe that there's only one person that you can truly be in love with, who no one can replace in your life.
Really?
Yeah.
This is so interesting.
Yeah.
A lot of people are struggling to find someone right now.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think people are struggling so much?
I think people are struggling in general in their own self-love journey and in their own healing journey, and they're hoping to find someone with the potential to heal them. And I think that's the problem. So the important thing, that there's a chapter on relationships and love, romantic love, in my book, where I talk about how self-love and romantic love are not at odds with each other. So they don't contradict each other, but they're also not reliant on each other in that way either. So there's this narrative of like, oh, I need to go on a self-love journey. Until I don't find me, I will not get into a relationship. But then there's also this narrative of, I need to find someone to truly be happy and love myself. And so we need to go in the middle and talk about how you can go on a self-love journey and you can discover yourself and find and heal. But at the same time, you can also date and explore that side of love and relationships as well. You're going to struggle in dating in general and in relationships in general if A, you haven't healed from your past, B, you're looking for a relationship to heal you, or C, you keep getting into the same relationships types. So like you keep getting into a relationship with someone who's emotionally unavailable, or someone who is controlling, or someone like you keep getting into toxic relationships. Like if there's a pattern of you getting into these type of relationships, then that means that you have not dealt with the stuff from your childhood and your adolescence that you really need to deal with. Only then can you get into a healthy relationship. A. If you keep getting into a relationship with the hope to get healed, you need to firstly heal yourself, because someone else will not heal you. Because yes, my romantic relationship is the biggest blessing of my life. I love it. I appreciate it. However, the biggest thing that has taught me is that I need to be a person within myself. Yes. I need to be self-dependent. The one thing that my husband always tells me is, you need to not rely on me for everything, because one day if I'm not there, you need to figure things out on your own. You need to be able to figure your life out on your own. So the biggest thing that I've learned through being in a romantic relationship is how important it is to be in a relationship with myself. Like I love spending time with him, but I love spending time with myself. But the moment that you start equating all your happiless and your self-worth and everything that you do with that person, then it's very hard to go on a self-love journey.
100%. I think you need to love yourself first before you even think about loving somebody else. And I think, like you said, I think my relationship with my fiance has really changed so much for me as well, in terms of like my confidence, which is such a small thing. Like a lot of people, I would say I've always been confident since I was little, but confident within myself rather than confident as a speaker or confident when I'm talking. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think the right relationship can totally change things for you, and the wrong relationship will totally change things for you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
But the only constant is a relationship with yourself.
Oh, yeah.
So work on that. I think that's the key part that we're trying to say here. What's the best quote on self-love that you want to share with everyone today?
Okay, so it's not on self-love in particular. Okay, there's a quote that changed my life, which allowed me to work on myself and allowed me to... So basically, the reason why I associate it with self-love is because I in particular, there's certain liberties that I didn't used to give myself. There's a confidence that I didn't have in myself. I used to doubt myself. I used to think that these particular things that I have achieved now, I'm not capable of achieving them. So there's like goals and dreams that I had, and I was like, I can never, ever like think about achieving any of this. I can't think of even being an author, a writer, getting on a TEDx stage. Like I didn't think I was capable.
Right.
So there was a book that I read, The Alchemist, which I think has changed the lives of many people. And there was this particular quote in it, which was, if you truly want something, the whole universe will conspire in allowing you, in making sure that you achieve that thing. And that for me changed everything for me, because I believe a lot in like meant to be in destiny, but I also believe in self-volition. I believe in you making things happen for yourself. You can't just sit here and think, oh yeah, the natural laws are going to make everything happen. There's a desire, there's a will, there's a inclination that I need this so much. There's a passion that I need this so much that I'm going to make it happen for myself. So when I read this and when I started applying it in my life, where yes, the universe is working for me, but what am I doing for myself? Right. What am I doing to achieve those things? And the moment that I started putting that particular quote in action, where I was like, okay, those things are happening. Okay, what am I going to make happen for myself? And when I started working on my goals and my dreams, I think my life literally changed forever. Wow. And it was this perspective where now when I talk about stuff, like before I used to be like, if this happens, that'll be great. Now when I talk about stuff, when that happens, this is I'm gonna be, this is gonna be great. Or when that happens, when I do this, when it's no longer an if, it's a when.
Yes.
Because that's how much I believe in myself now.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So powerful. Thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you.
The time has just flown by.
Yeah.
It's been so great to talk to you and to learn so much. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.